Hoffman, Captain Hamilton Miggs of the Black Eagle. The head of the firm had hardly recovered his mental serenity after the painful duty of explaining her financial position to the widow Hudson when his quick ear caught the sound of a heavy footstep in the counting-house. A gruff voice was audible at the same time, which demanded the rather more energetic language than was usually employed in that orderly establishment. Whether the principal was to be seen or not, the answer was evidently in the affirmative, for the lumbering tread came rapidly nearer, and a powerful double knock announced that the visitor was at the other side of the door. "Come in," cried Mr. Girdlestone, laying down his pen. This invitation was so far complied with that the handle turned and the door revolved slowly upon its hinges. Nothing more substantial than a strong smell of spirituous liquor, however, entered the apartment. "Come in," the merchant repeated impatiently. At the second mandate, a great tangled mass of black hair was slowly protruded round the angle of the door. Then a copper-colored forehead appeared, with a couple of very shaggy eyebrows, and evidently a pair of eyes, which protruded from their sockets and looked yellow and unhealthy. These took a long look at the senior partner, and then at his surroundings, after which, as if reassured by the inspection, the remainder of the face appeared: a flat nose, a large mouth, with a lower lip which hung down and exposed a line of tobacco-stained teeth, and finally a thick black beard which bristled straight out from the chin, and bore abundant traces of an egg having formed part of his owner's morning meal. The head having appeared, the body soon followed it, though all in the same anaconda-like style of progression, until the individual stood revealed. He was a stoutly built seafaring man, dressed in a pea jacket and blue trousers, and holding his tarpaulin hat in his hand, with a rough scrape and a most unpleasant leer, he advanced towards the merchant, a tattoo and hairy hand outstretched in signs of greeting. "Why, Captain," said the head of the firm, rising and grasping the other's hand with effusion, "I am glad to see you back and safe and well." "Glad to see ye, sir, glad to see ye." His voice was thick and husky, and there was an indecision about his gait, as though he had been drinking heavily. "I came in sort o' cautious," he continued, "'cause I didn't know who might be about. When you and me speak together, we likes to speak alone, you bet." The merchant raised his bushy eyebrows a little, as though he did not relish the idea of mutual confidence suggested by his companion's remark. "Hadn't you better take a seat?" he said. The other took a can-bottomed chair and carried it into the extreme corner of the office. Then, having looked sedately at the wall behind him and rapped it with his knuckles, he sat down, still throwing an occasional apprehensive glance over his shoulder. "I've got a touch of the jumps," he remarked apologetically to his employer. "I'd like to know as there ain't no one behind me." "You should give up these shocking habits of drinking," Mr. Girdlestone said seriously. "It is a waste of the best gifts with which Providence has endowed us. You are the worse for it both in this world and the next." Captain Hamilton Miggs did not seem to be at all impressed by this very sensible piece of advice. On the contrary, he chuckled boisterously to himself and slapped his thigh, expressed his opinion that his employer was a rum-un, and a conviction which he repeated to himself several times with various symptoms of admiration. "Well, well," Girdlestone said after a short pause, "boys will be boys, and sailors, I suppose, will be sailors. After 8 months of anxiety and toil ending in success, Captain, I am proud to be able to say the words some little license must be allowed. I do not judge others, but the same hard and fast lines by which I regulate my own conduct." This admirable sentiment also failed to elicit any response from the obdurate Miggs, except the same manifestation of mirth, and the same audible aside to the peculiarities of his master's character. "I must congratulate you on your cargo, and wish you the same luck for your next voyage," the merchant continued. "Ivory and gold dust, and skins, and resin, and cochineal, and gums, and ebony, and rice, and tobacco, and fruits, and nuts, and bulk. If there's a better cargo about, I'd like to see it," the sailor said defiantly. "An excellent cargo, Captain. Very good indeed. 3 of your men died, I believe." "3 of the lubbers went under, 2 of fever, and 1 of snakebite. Licks me what sailors are coming to in these days. When I was afore the mast, we'd ha' been ashamed to die of a trifle like that. Look at me, I've been down with coast fever 16 times, and I had yellow jack and dysentery, and I've been bit by the black cobra in the Andamans. I've had cholera, too. It broke out in a brig when I was in Sandwich Island trade, and I was shipmates with 7 dead out of a crew of 10. But I ain't none of the worse for it, nor never will be. But I say, Governor, ain't you got a drop of something about the office?" The senior partner rose, and taking a bottle from the cupboard, filled out a stiff glass of rum. The sailor drank it off eagerly and laid down the empty tumbler with a sign of satisfaction. "Say now," he said, with an unpleasant confidential leer, "weren't you surprised to see us come back, eh? Straight now, between man and man. The old ship hangs together well, and has lots of work in her yet," the merchant answered. "Lots of work, God's truth. I thought she was going in the bay. We'd a dirty night with a gale from the west-southwest, and had been going by dead reckoning for 3 days, so we weren't over and above sure of ourselves. She wasn't much of a sea-going craft when we left England, but the sun had fried all the pitch out of her seams, and you might have put your finger through some of them. 2 days and a night we were at the pumps, for she leaked like a sieve. We lost the fore topsail, blown clean out of the rig bolts. I never thought to see London again. If she could weather a gale like that, she could make another voyage. She could start on another," the sailor said gloomily. "But as like as not, she never see the end of it." Come, you're not quite yourself this morning, Miggs. We value you as a dashing, fearless fellow. Let me fill your glass again. Who doesn't fear a little risk where there's something to be gained? You'll lose your good name of it if you go on like that." "She's in a terrible bad way," the captain insisted. "You'll have to do something before she can go." "Oh, what shall we have to do?" "Dry dock and give her a thorough overhaul. She might sink before she got out of the channel if she went as she is just now." "Very well," the merchant said coldly. "If you insist on it, it must be done. But of course it would make a great difference in your salary, eh? You are at present getting £15 a month and 5% commission. These are exceptional terms in consideration of any risk that you may run. We shall dry dock the Black Eagle, and your salary is now £10 a month and 2.5 commission." "Belay there, belay!" the sailor shouted. His coppery face was a shade darker than usual, and his bilious eyes had a venomous gleam to them. "Don't you beat me down, curse you!" he hissed, advancing to the table, leaning his hands upon it while he pushed his angry face forward until it was within a foot of that of the merchant. "Don't you try that game on me, mate, for I'm a free-born British seaman, and I am under the thumb of no man." "You're drunk," said the senior partner. "Sit down." "You'd reduce my screw, would ya?" roared the Captain Hamilton Miggs, working himself into a fury. "Me that has worked for ye, and slaved for ye, and risked my life for ye. You try it on, Governor, just you try it on. Suppose I let out that little story of the painting out of the Marks. Where would the Firm of Girdlestone be then? I guess you'd rather double my wages than have that yarn going about." "What do you mean?" What do I mean? You don't know what I mean, do you? Of course not. It wasn't you as set us on to go at night and paint out the Governor Plimsoll marks and then paint them in again higher up, so as to be able to overload. That wasn't you, was it? Do you mean to assert that it was? In course I do, thundered the angry seaman. The senior partner struck the gong which stood upon the table. Gilray, he said quietly, go out and bring in a policeman. Captain Hamilton Miggs seemed to be somewhat startled by this sudden move of his antagonist. Steady your helm, Governor, he said. What are you up to now? I'm going to give you in charge. For what? For intimidating and using threatening language and endeavoring to extort money under false pretenses. There's no witnesses, the sailor said in half cringing, half defiant manner. Oh, yes, there are, Ezra Girdlestone remarked, coming into the room. He had been standing between the two doors which led to the counting-house, and had overheard the latter portion of the conversation. Don't let me interrupt you. You were saying that you would blacken my father's character unless he increased your salary. I didn't mean no harm, said Captain Hamilton Miggs, glancing nervously from one to the other. He had been fairly well known to the law in his younger days, and had no desire to renew the acquaintance. Who painted out those Blimsoll marks? Asked the merchant. It was me. Did anyone suggest it to you? No. Shall I send the policeman, sir? Asked Gilray, opening the door. Ask him to wait for a moment, Girdlestone answered. And now, Captain, to return to the original point, shall we dry dock the Black Eagle and reduce the salary, or do you see your way to go back in her on the same terms? I'll go back and be damned to it, said the captain recklessly, plunging his hands into the pockets of his pea jacket and plumping back into his chair. That's right, his grim employer remarked approvingly. But swearing is a most sinful practice. Send the policeman anyway, Ezra. The young man went out with an amused smile, and the two were left together again. You'll not be able to pass the government inspector unless you do something to her, the seaman said after a long pause, during which he brooded over his wrongs. Of course we shall do something. The firm is not mean, though it avoids unnecessary expense. We'll put a coat of paint on her and some pitch, and do up the rigging. She's a stout old craft, and with one of the smartest sailors afloat in command of her, for we always give you credit for being that, she'll run many a voyage yet. I'm paid for the risk, Governor, as you said just now, the sailor remarked, but I don't seem kind of hard on the as isn't, on the mate and on the hands. There is always risk, my dear Captain. There is nothing in the world without risk. You remember what is said about those who go down to the sea in the ships. They see the wonders of the deep, and in return they incur some little danger. My house is Eccleston Square, might be shaken down by an earthquake, or a gale might blow in the walls, but I'm not always brooding over the chances of it. There's no use your talking if you're granted that some misfortune will happen to the Black Eagle. The sailor was silenced, but not convinced, by his employer's logic. Well, he said sulkily, I am going, so there's an end of it, and there's no good in having any more palaver about it. You have your object in running rotten ships, and you make it worth my while to take my chances in them. I'm suited, and you're suited, and there's no more to be said. That's right. Have some more rum. No, not a spot. Why not? Because I likes to keep my head pretty clear when I'm talking to you, Mr. Girdlestone. Out of your office I'll drink to further orders, but I won't do business and muddle myself at the same time. When do you want me to start? When she's unloaded and loaded up again, 3 weeks or a month yet. I expect that spender will have come in with the maid of Athens by the time. Unless some accident happens on the way, said Captain Hamilton Miggs, with his old leer. He was at Sierra Leone when we came up the coast. I couldn't put in there, for the swabs have got a warrant out again for me for putting a charge of shot into a nigger. That was a wicked action, very wrong indeed, the merchant said gravely. You must consider the interests of the firm, Miggs. We can't afford to have a good port blocked against our ships in this fashion. Did they serve this right on you? Another nigger brought it aboard. Did you read it? No, I threw it overboard. And what became of the nigger? Well, said Miggs with a grin, when I threw the right overboard, he happened to be holding on to it, so you see, he went over too. Then I upped the anchor and scooted. There were sharks about there. A few. Really, Miggs, the merchant said, you must restrain your sinful passions. You have broken the 5th commandment and closed the trade of Freetown to the Black Eagle. I never was worth a rat, the sailor answered. I would give a cuss for any of the British settlements. Give me real niggers, chaps as knows nothing of law or civilizing, and any rot of the sort, I can pull along with them. I have often wondered how you managed it, Girdlestone said curiously. You succeed in picking up a cargo where the steadiest of the best men can't get as much as a bag of nuts. How do you work it? There's many would like to know that, Miggs answered with an expressive wink. It is a secret, then? Well, it ain't a secret to you, 'cause you ain't a skipper, and it don't matter if you knows it or not. I don't want to have 'em all at the same game. How is it, then? I'll tell ye, said Miggs. He seemed to have recovered his serenity by this time, and his eyes twinkled as he spoke of his exploits. I gets drunk with them, and that's how I does it. Oh, indeed. Yes, that's how it works, Lord love ye. When these fast-class, certificated, second cousin to the narrow merchant skippers come out, they move about among the chiefs and talks down to them as if they was 10 Methuselahs on wheels, and Almighty's great coat wouldn't make a waistcoat for some of these blokes. Now, when I gets among 'em, I has 'em all in the cabin, though they're black and naked, and the smell ain't over and above pleasant. Then I out with the rum, and it's help yourself and pass the bottle. Pretty soon I see the tongues getting loosened, and as I lie low and keep dark, I get a pretty good idea of what's in the market. Then, when I knows what's to be got, it's queer if I don't manage to get it. Besides, they like a little notice just as Christians does, and they remembers me because I treat them well. An excellent plan, Miggs, a capital plan, said the senior partner. You are an invaluable servant. Well, the captain said, rising from his chair, I'm giving a great deal to dry with all this palaver. I don't mind getting drunk with niggers, chiefs, but I'm darned if I'll, he passed, but the grim smile on his companion's face showed that he appreciated the compliment. I say, he continued, giving his employer a confidential nudge with his elbow, suppose we go down in the bay this last time, you'd have been a bit out of your reckoning, what? Why so? Well, we were over-insured on our outward passage, and an accident then might have put thousands in your pocket. I know coming back, though, the cargo was worth more than the insurance, I reckon. You'd have been out of pocket if we'd found it. If it would have been a curse of the engineer hoisted on his own Peter, as Shakespeare says. We take our chances of these things, the merchant said with dignity. Well, good morning, Governor, Captain Hamilton Miggs said briskly. When you wants me, you can lay your hands on me at the old crib, the Cock and Cowslip, Rotherhithe. As he passed out through the office, Ezra rejoined his father. He's a curious chap, he remarked, jerking his head in the direction which Miggs had taken. I heard him bellow like a bull, so I thought I had best listen to what he had to say. He's a useful servant, though. The fellow's half a savage himself, his father said. He's in his element among them. That's why he's got on so well with them. He doesn't seem much the worse for the climate neither. His body does not, but his soul, Ezra, his soul. However, to return to business, I wish you to see the underwrites and pay the premium on the Black Eagle. If you see your way to it, increase the policy, but do it carefully, Ezra, and with tact. She will start about the time of the equatorial gales. If anything should happen to her, it would be as well that the firm should have a margin on the right side. End of chapter 4.